Well, Congress returns to work later this morning with a major job on its plate. Try to reach a deal to keep the government running in the next 3 days, or it's going to shut down. But our next guest says, please, let it shut down. What's he talking about? Let's talk to Fox News contributor Erick Erickson, joining us right now from down in Georgia. Eric, look, your daughter's heading to Washington, D.C. for a school field trip. You want her to be able to go into the Smithsonian, don't you?
Right. Oh, yes, I do. But, that's kind of the point. The media is already blaming the president for a government shutdown that hasn't happened. It seems like the media always blames Republicans when it's the Democrats who are obstructing things right now, and yet they're not getting any of the blame. And the reason I think we ought to go through a government shutdown is because the last two times have been run by Democrats, and they always made it as painful as possible. And I think it would be great for people to see that the government can close down and the world isn't going to end. The Smithsonian doesn't necessarily have to close up shop. It's just President Obama made them close up shop to make tourists mad at the Republicans.
And you know what? That worked, because when you look at history, the Republicans get the blame for it. Part of it is just the way things work, and part of that, as you know, Eric, is the mainstream media is always going to portray guys like you evil conservatives, as the troublemakers.
Right. And, that's kind of the point of highlighting this and the absurdity of the media reporting on the government shutdown. The president is working to actually get a budget passed, and the Democrats want more and more and more spending, and they're the ones holding the budget hostage. And yet, if you read the New York Times, for example, you're going to see blame towards Republicans and the president as opposed towards Chuck Schumer and the Democrats in the Senate. I think if the president were to shut down the government and he wanted to target closings of government, he could make it pay for the Democrats, make it painful for them.
When you look at what a government shutdown actually means, as I remember from last time, people still get their government checks. People who work for the federal government still get paid. They might get paid a week later or something like that. But the main thing is the national monument's closed, and that's the most visible sign of it.
Right, and even that's not necessarily the case, only if the president allows it. Look, most of the government is self-funding, and many of them have reserves that they can spend even while the government's shut down. But the president likes to close down monuments, or at least President Obama did, to make it really painful on tourists to then call their representatives in Congress and tell them to do something. I really think every time we get to this point, people say the sky is falling if the government closes down. I really would like at a time more and more Americans want activist government to see, you know what, we're not all going to die if the government closes for a few days.
Well, if you look at where Washington was a week ago, it sounded like the President of the United States was willing to fight the Democrats for about $1 billion to start construction on more parts of the wall. But in the last 48 hours or so, the President has made it pretty clear, you know what, Democrats aren't going to go for that. I'm going to bring it back in September or October. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, listen, I am. I have no doubt the president's going to build this wall. Personally, I think he had 60 million people vote for him. If 40 million of them coughed up $100 for a brick, we could crowdsource the funding for the wall and build it quick.
That is such a good... Why don't you start that? Why don't you start a GoFundMe page to build the wall?
I think this is a good idea to build the wall.
.com. All right. If Eric comes up with that in the next 5 minutes, once he leaves the camera and goes on his computer, we'll let you know. All right. Eric, thank you very much for joining us today from Macon, Georgia.